Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Um, Welcome to another Coffee Break Chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, executive producer, Light Thief Productions, and we have a show for you this morning. We have Oliver Donahue, Brittany Holdahl, and Steve Way from Argent Combat. They're not on screen yet, but I will bring them up shortly. We're going to be going over why you would never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly more well known. We'll be talking about the Kensington Encampments, imperialism, and vaccine mandates. It's a lovely gray morning here in the city of Philadelphia. This morning, we are having a little bit of interesting goings on. We have the city clearing the Kensington encampments, the folks who live in Kensington um, and who do not have their own homes but have set up homes, temporary shelter on the sidewalks along Frankfurt Avenue underneath the L, have been facing eviction from that spot for a number of weeks. And it looks like today is the day that the city has decided to go back on its word and actually evict those people without having any place for them to go. So there are currently some live streams going on. I encourage you to seek out that independent media. Um, uh, Xander Antagonist is one of the folks live streaming this morning. Um, it's a relatively peaceful scene up on Frankfurt Avenue because uh, there are no counter protests this morning because there was no way to organize them, not knowing exactly when or where the city would show up. And so the folks who would normally be counter protesting are just doing their best just to document what's going on in the city. Um, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into today's topics. I'm going to welcome onto screen the members of Argent Combat. Welcome. Let's introduce y'all. I have you starting with Brittany. If you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Yeah, absolutely. James, thanks so much for having us on. Hi, everybody. My name is Brittany. I'm the executive director of Argent Combat. We are a small Philadelphia based organization of instructors, choreographers, and students studying stage combat and theatrical violence. And pronouns are she, her, and they, them.
Awesome. And Steve, if you would please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
Absolutely. I'm Steve Way. Hi, it's really great to be here. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I am one of the senior demo assistants with Argent Combat, which means I basically am around there to get hit and do some hitting back when our leader feels he wants to show some of that. I'm an actor combatant, which means I do fights, but I also act, and I am actively developing my career towards a model of instruction. So there you go.
Awesome. And Oliver, last but not least, if you would please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
For sure. I'm Oliver Donahue. My pronouns are he and his and him. I'm Argent's lead instructor. I'm a certified instructor with the Society of American Fight Directors and with Fight Directors Canada. I've been sword fighting and pretending to do violence towards people and really doing theatrical violence towards people for more than a decade. I teach all the classes that we have currently, and I do all the choreography when theater exists. Whenever there's violence to be done. I'm the one that makes it look good, while also making sure all of our actors and all of our students are safe and taken care of, and you know, just making sure that everybody looks good while not actually being violent towards each other.
Awesome. So violence without violence, and that's the best kind of violence, I think. Um,
100%, yeah.
Also, not on screen, but joining us is Dr. Ardentia Hall Karambe, one of our regular guests. Just say good morning, if you would, Dr. Hall.
Good morning.
Uh,
You'll hear me laugh every once in a while.
and we'll pull Dr. Hall into the conversation
Okay.
as we go as well. So, Argent Combat. We were having a brief conversation before we got started this morning, Brittany. You said your classes are actually quite full with the precautions that you're taking during COVID right now. What does an Argent Combat class look like during the time of COVID?
It's well, it took a lot of preparation, and a lot of our big tenets are to ensure that our students have a voice of agency, autonomy, and consent. So several months ago, I'd say probably March into April, we were trying to be a bit ahead of the game and consult with our students and be like, if we are to start in-person classes again, here's a quick survey. Let us know how you would feel most comfortable. We currently have it set that all students need to be fully vaccinated. We are going to be revisiting our unarmed classes at a later date, but for the time being, we wanted to focus on a discipline that enables and encourages social distancing. So we went with quarterstaff because it's literally a 6-foot-long pole.
So teaching people how to keep people at least 6 feet back, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And just as an extra precaution, because the theatrical art that we do is a very aerobic activity, and this pandemic is a respiratory disease. We do want to maintain that social distancing. So quarterstaff has been going great so far, but we also wanted to keep it outdoors, and we also require that our students be fully masked. And so far, so good. We got our permit from Philly Parks and Rec. I called into local jurisdictions just to make sure if anybody calls and says, hey, there are people fighting with sticks in the park, that they know who we are, what we're doing, and that we have a permit to be there, and that we're not actually harming each other. So it was a full process. Our first official in-person class was July 15th. And yeah, our capacity is pretty full, which is a really pleasant surprise. We weren't sure how it was going to be, trying to pursue reentry with our specific class types. We weren't sure if folks were going to be very trepidatious, but I think we did a pretty good job of making sure that our students had voices of consent and concerns addressed, and that's been it's been really successful, and it's a good feeling knowing that theater can still happen, especially our particular type of theater, in a way that is respectful of everybody's autonomy and agency. And we even, just as an extra measure, we've established a reopening committee meeting to happen every month or bi-monthly, just to keep us all on track with, what are some of the current mandates. It's just reentry has been something that's been consistently evolving as we learn new things. And fortunately, we also have a medical representative who's a member of our board now. He hasn't been officially introduced yet. He just agreed recently, but he is a BSN and an RN with a local hospital college campus, but he's also a stage combat enthusiast and a martial artist. So he's just been an absolute diamond in the rough for us to find when it comes to a person who is medically savvy as well as savvy to what it is we do as theatrical movement artists. So
it's interesting. I was listening to some articles this morning about the limited availability of medical personnel, how medical personnel have been leaving for other careers, leaving for other organizations, or rather than working in a hospital setting. And but the demand for medical personnel is way higher right now than it ever has been. Um, I was just thinking that it's interesting that a lot of theater companies in in the Philadelphia area, as well as around the country, could really use the advice of medical personnel. How did you go about searching for somebody to give that advice, or find that person?
well, funny enough, for us personally, we lucked out. This individual is a dear friend of mine, and I do have a lot of friends within the medical field, which is another positive. But this individual, he's just a very compassionate and kind person, and his set of skills not only lends itself to being an incredible medical representative and medical consultant for us to ensure that we're doing the best by our students every step of the way of reentry, but he also has a specific interest in stage combat and martial arts, and has taken classes with some of our sibling organizations, and has been looking to take some classes with us. So it really just kind of fell into place. The only advice I can really have is for other theater patrons, or rather for other theater organizations and for other schools, please definitely look into seeking a medical representative. And you'd be surprised where you can find them. A lot of my colleagues who are in the medical field are also patrons of theater and patrons of the arts. So start by asking them. And you'd be surprised. This whole thing of establishing our board and trying to expand, the only allegory I can really come with is I felt like a nerdy kid right before prom, and I just screamed into a school hallway, "I don't have a date for prom." And then all the cool kids just kind of ducked their heads out of the classroom doors like, "Oh, I'll go with you." I'm like, oh God, okay. And now I don't know what to do with myself because there are all these really competent and cool people that have been trying to help us out in our mission, which is be that nerdy kid screaming in a hallway. It's the only advice I have.
Uh, that's actually great advice. A lot of times, as producers, as the kind of people who steer organizations, we don't want to like admit, hey, I don't know how to do this. Yeah, I remember early on in the pandemic, on social media, I and other people kind of railed out against, people having in-person events. And to be quite frank, the situation hasn't all changed all that much. The Delta variant is seeing a lot of new infections and hospitalizations here in the city of Philadelphia and in New Jersey and in Delaware and in Maryland. So it's not and nationwide really. It's not like we're through the pandemic. It's not like like everybody's like we're back, but hold your horses just a little bit.
Yeah, not quite yet. No.
Yeah, we've
It'll be
learned how
nice,
to
but not quite yet.
deal. We've learned how to deal with an airborne pandemic, but once we get everybody following the advice, then start to be back. Any thoughts, Steve, Oliver? What do you guys got on your plate? How has re-entering this in this pandemic world been treating the hands-on aspect of dealing face to face with your students?
It's funny you should say that because there isn't a hands-on aspect right now. Reason number one of why we're doing stick is because I have a 6-foot pole and you have a 6-foot pole, and we get to stand 6 to 10 feet away from each other. So the hands-on aspect is still not here, and while I'm sure it will be coming at some point in our lives, once once more regulations come down about what Delta is going to be like, or Lambda, or whatever the next variant is going to be. um, it's still the fact that we can at least be together, with being vaccinated, with being masked, with being out of doors, is it's still, it's not a perfect system, because we, ideally we would still all be home and away from each other, but it's a lot. Being together has been really, really good, because I'm sure we all missed being with other people this entire last year, and so we're not hands on, we're not as close as we'd like to be, but we're at least together making art again, and that's the real trick. This last year has seen so many really, really interesting innovations by necessity, as people are trying to put stuff together online. People are zooming in performances, people are doing a lot of digital stuff, but combat is one of those things that you really need two people close to each other. And that's a thing that we specifically were not supposed to be doing for a long time, but these
Yeah,
days we can.
trying to figure out how you could actually do digital combat other than like a quasi hacker scene from like the 1990s movie Hackers.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so just being able to be in person, while masked, while vaccinated, while out of doors, it's as safe as can be made safe while still being with other people.
Yeah, yeah. No, it sounds definitely like you all have thought through your precautions, and I highly encourage and adore the fact that you're trying to figure out a way to be in person safely. There are risks in anything, that's a very anti-vaxxer sentiment, but I'm not saying it as an anti-vaxxer. I'm saying it because there are risks inherent to anything. And, when you go out during cold and flu season on a regular year, you could catch the flu and die. But wearing a mask, and maintaining some element of social distancing, not putting yourself in an office space or an enclosed space where you are forced to breathe in the same air that other people have breathed out, with their germs and whatnot, seems to be a pretty good way to avoid these communicable diseases, which have the chance of being deadly.
Yeah, I mean,
Steve.
you can get hit by
Oh,
a
sorry.
truck
Go
crossing
ahead.
the street, but
Right.
you're going to look both ways before you do. It's so, we're in the midst of a highly contagious respiratory pandemic, so we stay away from each other and we mask up.
Right. Steve, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the ideal world being that we stay home, of course, is definitely something, like it's easy to ask ourselves, like, well, why come back now? Why start doing even the safest of activities, together. And I think it's easy to turn on your TV, or especially like Disney Plus, like you can pay $20 and watch Black Widow right now. I mean, who's making that content, and how are they doing it safely? So it's sort of like again, it's risk management. It's how safe can we be against this pandemic, while also teaching skills that are still being used right now by some folks, like how do we prepare for what that is going to be like, 2-3 months down the road. And like it's a careful calculation we have to make.
I'd
um
also say in general that your whole schema is risk management. In general, I'd say that teaching stage combat is risk management. You're wielding real objects that could injure the other members of the cast and crew. And yeah, so
It's all grounded in historical sources. Like stage combat as we know it in the U.S. Kind of began as well. It began on film sets, but also as part of fencing. It came out of fencing, so like the Hollywood Fencing Academy. And as we decided, well, that the little pointy back and forth doesn't quite look right for Excalibur or for Game of Thrones type work. Then we started looking to other historical sources, and we just keep using those kinds of those props. We dull them down. But otherwise, if I hand one of these props to a perfect stranger, they will say, "Oh my goodness, this is real."
mm-hmm.
Aside from the fact that it's not sharp, or well, in the case of a stick, it's a stick. But
it's a stick. Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Doesn't make it less dangerous. It's just, yeah, absolutely. It's all about managing the risks of those things. So, absolutely.
Welcome to the screen, Dr. Hall. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I wanted to segue into some other arts that are live right now, live and in person. I recently, this past weekend, went to Theater in the X in Malcolm X Park. Saw the first run of the West Philadelphia Meeting, which is it's a great piece. I highly recommend everyone go see it. It's on for the next 2 weekends. Definitely go to Malcolm X Park, bring your chair, enjoy an afternoon in the park with some live theater. And this is another example of what theaters are doing to still have theater and be in person and yet try to manage those risks. They require you to wear your mask if you're interacting with cast or crew, regardless of your vaccination status, because even if you're fully vaccinated, you might catch the Delta variant, you might catch any of the other variants that are out there, and vaccines aren't 100% foolproof. Regardless of the fact that we would like them to be, they are not. And so they recommend you wear your mask, and that these are layers of things. So folks are still harping on in business circles and in news circles about there being some sort of mask confusion, and I don't quite understand why this is the narrative we've chosen to go with, but I don't know. It makes sense to me. You wear your seatbelt in a car because the seatbelt reduces the risk that you're going to get ejected from the car. Now, in 99% of accidents, you're not going to get ejected from the car, and you're not going to die. But the seatbelt reduces that risk. And even wearing a seatbelt, you could get injuries, like your liver could become detached and you could die. But it reduces that risk. So, wear your
But some
mask.
people find them highly uncomfortable, the seatbelt. They don't want to have to get them around their gut. They don't want to have to get them around their tits. They don't want to have to do all that. They're just going down the block. They're not going far. They don't plan on interacting with anyone. They're just going down the block. So why put on my seatbelt? I'm just going to get some gas. I'm not going far. I don't need my seatbelt. I could go looking like this out in anything I'm wearing. I'm fine and go see nobody. And that's the same way we are with masks. Everybody doesn't enjoy wearing a seatbelt. And that's why cops still catch people not wearing seatbelts.
It is. And so I don't, it's confusing to me because
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense on the logical level because there's enough stats that show that seatbelts save lives. It's been 30 plus years, okay, of evidence that proves that over and over and over again. Yet you will hear of someone in an accident and they were ejected from the car because they did not have on their seatbelt.
Right. And why and the wearing a mask thing is even more selfless than that, because you're protecting people that you don't even know. So I don't know.
But the key word in your sentence is selfless.
Mm. Are people not inherently selfless?
No.
No. Right. Okay.
Look at the whole. I love that the whole room just died. Everybody's we come out of the room. So we come out of the room. So we just so self-absorbed. Think about a baby. A baby is self. They cry. They get you to. You James, you're going through it right now.
True. It's true.
Okay.
She is pretty selfish.
It's all about her. It's all about her. Because if not, you're gonna hear it. And we have to, in some ways, train people to have empathy towards other folks. We've lost that as part of our inheritance of being human. We've kind of lost that along the way.
In general, though, the impetus to be selfless is part of and part and parcel with doing both service industry jobs, where like we're all entertainers, we're all people that give of ourselves for other people's entertainment, and also of politics. People are supposed to be serving their community when they become politicians. Well, I mean, they're supposed to be. I see your face, Dr. Hall. But yeah, they okay. But they're supposed to be being selfless, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive or a little bit Pollyanna about it.
Historically, when we look back at politics in most places, it was, and particularly here in the United States, it was done by people who left their homes, who left their jobs to go and serve for a short amount of time. It was never meant to be a career. It was never meant to be a job of longevity. You were supposed to go serve your community, your country, then leave and let someone else come in and serve, But now we have people who serve for 40 years. Why do we think policy doesn't change? You've been sitting there for 40 years. No fresh ideas are coming in. You're not letting any new people. You've made it a career.
Well, and that I also think that's an interesting parallel again here between arts and politics. I know I'm drawing this strange parallel this morning, but it's interesting parallel because you have I'm vice president on the board of the PDC, and you have all these arts organizations that are nonprofit organizations. They were set up with bylaws to force a refreshing of the leadership every couple of years, and yet you have organizations that end up with artistic directors or members of the board who've been there for 30, 40 years, and you have the same situation. What, ostensibly they should be serving the community, serving their artistic organization, and then they just end up running it for 40 years straight.
Well,
sorry, Dr. Hall, go ahead.
Go, please, Brittany. Please. Because I could talk all day, honey. Please.
Well, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
But I don't know. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that one thing that is the commonality of all art that has been so ignored for so long by so many people is that art is the narrative tool that we have for the collective memory of humanity. Sorry if that sounds super cerebral, but it's just a thing where art is the tool that we have.
Speak the truth and shame the devil, baby. Speak the truth and shame the devil. Mm-hmm.
Heck yes. But yeah, it's the thing. We have this incredible tool that we all have within us. I can't tell you how many folks I've met who are CPAs that are like, yeah, I was an actor once, I did theater once. I'm like, no, we all intrinsically have that in us. And I feel like art so often is not seen as essential work. I feel like so often art is a very important device that we all have that so many people frown upon yet demand within the same point. I'm kind of circling back to Steve's point about, in quarantine, we've all been streaming things. We've all been consuming art, just to get by. But it's not taken seriously. And I feel like there are so many theater companies out there, and art producers in general. One of the things Argent Combat is desperately trying not to do, who don't hold space for change. And the problem is that is actually very detrimental to the purpose of art. We are supposed to be instruments of change. We're supposed to be agents of change as artists. It's kind of how I feel about it. I rambled.
No,
Hello.
No, you're fine.
You didn't ramble at all.
I want to hit on a couple of points that she brought up. One is that I totally agree with I think art is something that I often tell my students, and just people in general, that we come out of the womb knowing how to play. Mm-hmm. Someone has to teach us how to work and how to become one in society. But we come out of the womb knowing how to play. We will play with our fingers and toes all damn day and be delighted within ourselves because we are just scrumptious and be happy. And then finding someone else to play with. We will find someone else to play with. It becomes harder to find other people to work with. And then being able to share that workspace and being as generous in that workspace as we are in our play space. And we have to learn how to do that. And I think a lot of times as a person who has set up organization, who sits at the head of an organization that she has founded, I always feel it's my job to try to extend myself as well extend people opportunities to learn in the process. You know what I'm saying? Because I know I can't sit here forever, but at the same time, I'm not going to let you drive the boat into a wall because you don't quite know what you're doing yet. So let me put safeguards in place. So I understand that the need for change and the need to let new voices come into the space, but there has to be a solid foundation so that organization continues to go on beyond all of us in that space, because that's the desire, hopefully, of the founder, of the people who are rooting that organization. So when we look at places like the Walnut that has been here forever, we have to ask ourselves why and how. How did it do that? And yeah, we could say to a certain extent, part of it is because it built up a white wall of Jericho and wouldn't let nothing else in. It became very exclusive, and that's how they did it, and that's how they chose to do it. But as a societal tool, which theater is, they are now getting the reckoning of that because other people are beginning to knock at the door. You cannot continue in this space and continue to propagate those ideas because that's not what theater does. Theater has always been, the root of it and I say this every damn show, the root of it is rooted in the citizenry. It is the way for us to learn about who we are as human beings and how to be with each other in this time and space. And if you are not rooted in this time and space, that becomes the drama, that becomes the agitation, that becomes the fight that we have as a society.
Yes. That is it. Like I feel like a lot of, and I'm sorry, I hope I'm not cutting
That's
off.
all right, Donna. No, please, because I said I could rumble on, child. Please.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of the theater companies nowadays that are being held accountable for past actions have been rooting their principles in what we call, and it's funny because we're Argent Combat, we're all about theatrical violence and stage combat. but even though that is the thing we do, it is still a collaborative art. And I feel like a lot of these theater organizations that are being held accountable now have been rooting their principles in being combative as opposed to collaborative, which is contrary to what theater is supposed to be. It's supposed to be collaborative. You know, we discover ourselves and we work with others to discover each other. Again, just being the mirror that we hold up to society. Like that's, we're just holding them accountable for the fact that they have not been doing good theater. I'm just going to say, if I may.
They might have been doing good work as far as the audience is concerned, but to the community, what you belong to the theater community, what are you doing for them? The name of my company is Kaleidoscope Cultural Arts Collective. We are a collective of artists who have bonded together, who said we are going to work together to create theater. We're going to bring all of our talents from every venue we can and create theater and leave space open for people to do that. But also, but going in that process, we have to make sure that when we choose to leave, I see myself, I'm more of the Steve Bezos type of leadership, not in the sense of Amazon and all those damn packages and all that waste and all that kind of stuff, but in the sense that when it's time for me to step down, I'm gonna step down and it's gonna keep on going without me. But I wanna make sure that it's solid when I do, and I think that's what any good leadership is looking for. They're trying to build on for the next generation, but holding on to ideologies that are not healthy. That becomes
and I think that interestingly, I think that the disconnect happens when we don't acknowledge that things can change around us, and new truths can be found regardless of our awareness of them.
right.
I've said this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I've said this many times before as well, is that the root of theater comes from African culture, and the use of theater in African culture was both court, history and storytelling, and a way of creating new laws and rules.
James, can we expand on, because it wasn't just in African culture. There is not a civilization that exists on this planet that did not have some form of ritual and performance that recorded the history and the culture of that group. When those men or those women came from hunting, from planting, they told those stories of how to continue to grow plants, of how, all the origin stories. So every culture had that. So
storytelling and theater is older than anything. I think it predates humanity. As
it's the mark of humanity. It is the mark of humanity. That's when we became human.
What I'm talking about is, like if you look at especially Eurocentric views on the history of theater, they'll oftentimes go back to Greek theater. The Greek theater was set up with, and I've gone over this on some production notes that I've done before. But if you haven't read them or you haven't followed me, you probably don't know this. But Greek theater was set up as the classic Greek theater is elders or gods on a raised platform sitting in judgment of two groups of people who are having an argument. That's the classic setup of Greek theater. You have the chorus, which is two groups actually having an argument over a topic, and you have this raised platform with anywhere from 3 to 5 gods, and if you go back further than that, if you go back into if you look at even modern tribal ways of solving arguments amongst groups. You'll see this replicated both in native cultures around the world, but my my supposition and my admittedly lightly researched but also supported by research position is that cultural exchange led to this classic Greek theater from an African root, um, uh, because this kind of getting together of two groups with elders in judgment has existed in African culture since time immemorial. And that's where I go to the African root of theater.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but
Okay.
that all being said, that's a long way to get around to that's a long way to get around to theater and politics, and the political need to serve the community, because politics is another is another offshoot of theater. The court system is another offshoot of theater, and if you look at the court systems that exist in almost every culture, they are an offshoot of this whole whole exact situation. You have two groups. Yes, Dr. Hall.
My hand is up. I'm sorry, and I was going to pinpoint our audience to the play to go look to. Look at Agamemnon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you want to know about how Western society is set up, read the Greek tragedy, starting with Oedipus, Oedipus Rex, Oedipus at Colonus. Go to Agamemnon, Antigone. You will get a crash course in the basics of Western law, thought, and civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Because
And
those
so
are the
you
great
have
ones.
these.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sorry?
You're right. No, you're right. You have the two sides that are having that argument.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And you have an elder in judgment. And so and most of our politics is this kind of collaborative environment that Brittany is talking about, and where especially Western democracy, the classic Western democracy, we're supposed to be collaborating and coming to the thing I think that we've lost recently is that all of these environments are a search for truth. They are a search for a greater truth than any one individual can come to themselves. The idea of a court system, which is often quoted by lawyers, is that you are in search of the truth, not of any one perspective, but a just truth that is universal, not what one person thinks. And politicians are in service of that system too. So I get a little upset about people, allowing this questioning of vaccine mandates as a political tool, because you're in service of your community. How are you going to try to serve your community and question the very thing that allows modern society to exist? We have had vaccine mandates for what, 4 or 5 generations now. As long as vaccines have existed, we've had vaccine mandates. The first vaccines that came around in Western culture right around the time of the founding of the United States' current government. There was a vaccine mandate. You couldn't go and do things in commerce, in government, in public without getting vaccinated. And you had a vaccine passport in the form of a scar on your arm. Interestingly, there was even, fake vaccine passports back then because people were selling fake scars. And they didn't have modern theater makeup, so they didn't look very good. Um, at any rate, so yeah, so I I don't understand the this pushback against vaccine mandates. I think that, like as a society, we would have gotten past that by now, but maybe I'm crazy. Um,
You said the word tools.
yeah.
Yeah,
What do you mean?
tool. But on both sides, tools looking at tools, tools identifying tools. They are being utilized as tools of the right or whomever whoever the anti-vaxxer person that they are utilizing or listening to are utilizing them as tools, and they think they are going against tools when they're really being played as tools, if that makes sense. So they're being played when that anti-vaxxer is probably vaxxed up themselves.
Well,
Nine times,
look at
nine
look
times out of
at
10, the
Florida's
politicians
governor. Yeah, look
all
at Florida's governor.
vaccinated, but telling you don't
Florida's
worry
governor
about it.
Ron DeSantis, yesterday, I believe, came out publicly to say that he has tested positive for the Delta variant of COVID-19, and that he is feeling a little under the weather, but it's probably better because he is vaccinated. Yet he's mandating, which thankfully people are fighting against, mandating that schools not have a mask mandate. Let me wrap my brain around this a little bit. He is saying that people cannot require masks in schools to protect children. That I'm lost.
It's so contrary. I mean, especially looking at, a lot of schools' dress codes. Like I saw a post circulating that gave me a good laugh, and I laughed lest I should weep. But a person was like, "Yeah, if I were in high school nowadays, I'd wear a tank top with spaghetti straps and a short mini skirt." Because apparently we don't care about any
I
sort of variant of
remember.
dress code.
Yeah, I remember being in school, and this will date me a little bit. This is one of those say something and date yourself without saying your age.
Then I'll be
I
quiet.
there was the co-ed naked t-shirt line that came out when I was in high school, middle school and high school. And yeah, I remember several students getting in trouble for wearing those shirts, and it being required by various school boards that people not wear those shirts, and fights over freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and um, I don't know, how is it protecting a child to say that there's something wrong with their body, in the form of, no, you can't wear clothing that you feel is flattering and fits you, uh, while it's not protecting a child to have teachers and students wear masks whenever possible. Um, I just get so confused by these things. I don't know. Somebody please,
Well,
make things less
it's
confusing for me.
two things. Like it's two things. The first thing is that it's hypocrisy, and we all know that it's hypocrisy. It's we all look at it and listen to people talk, and how yes, you need to dress properly and modestly, and that's what we're enforcing, quote unquote. But to mandate that you wear a piece of cloth over your face because we're in the midst of a deadly respiratory pandemic, that's a bridge too far. It's naked, bald hypocrisy. And the other thing is, any person in a position of power who is saying anything really, is it's somebody's making money off of it. If you have people who are talking about not trusting the vaccine, don't get the vaccine, this disease is not a problem, like it's fine. There's somebody's getting paid somewhere because it's like science exists and facts exists, and these and politicians are, at least educated individuals who other people thought enough of to put them into positions of power. So if they're saying things that are demonstrably false, somebody's getting paid to do it. Like, and that might be a hugely cynical take, because I'm a hugely cynical person.
You
But
don't say.
really, oh yeah, I'm sure this is a shock to everyone who knows me very well. But it's like
I would like to say
I resist the opinion that people are dumb when we could much easier say people are getting paid.
Yeah. Okay. But how are they getting paid? Would be I would like to highlight how they're getting paid in this particular
I'm
case,
not seeing
which is
it.
well, what it is they're getting paid in power. They see that
Okay.
uttering those things. Like if I wanted to be real popular right now and have like one of the most watched channels on YouTube, I could just say, vaccines are dumb, or like espouse all these conspiracy theories about what's in a vaccination, and I would have an instantaneously very popular channel. I would hate myself, and I would be, risking the lives of people watching, but that's how Fox News makes its money.
Yeah, and the Fifth Horseman. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But, no, and I was gonna say, I think for me, it's, they're supposed to be the party of pro-life, while so much of what they do is quite the opposite. And then you have to ask, whose life are you pro about?
Well, they're pro their own life. I mean, look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump was a Democrat who gave money to both Democrats and Republicans his entire career, because he knew that in order to get anything done in New York, you have to pay off everybody. And then, now he's the figurehead of the Republican Party with a bunch of bullshit that he doesn't even believe himself. I guarantee you, he does not believe a word he says. I guarantee you, he doesn't even think through any of the things that he's saying. He just thinks, what is my end goal? And that's why I would think that there would be an evolutionary vehicle that would filter out this kind of thing. Since we are relatively like a herd species, like we get into society together, we work like a herd sometimes, but then the most successful, quote unquote, of us tend to look out only for ourselves. Why isn't there an evolutionary vehicle or a societal vehicle that weeds that out?
Because you don't get rich by spending money.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I have been contemplating. For those of you who know me, I'm very goth and very morbid. And I've contemplated and come to the conclusion that the fifth horseman of the apocalypse is absolutely misinformation. That is the thing that I've been contemplating, because we have war, we have pestilence, we have death, but then there's got to be that one awkward horse that's just facilitating all of those at this point, especially in our day and age of information.
Where it's just to be so easy, it's so easy to get, but yet it's so cloudy.
That's the thing. Like I could, for example, make a
Wikipedia
page. Yeah, I can make a Wikipedia page about myself and say, Brittany Holdahl barfs rainbows. And there's nothing there to refute it. Aside from people that have critical thinking skills, and do their actual research. Like, no, does she actually vomit rainbows? That is false. I'm a very happy-go-lucky goth, but I don't actually vomit rainbows.
So James,
are you sure? Yes, Dr. Hall.
You know too much. Okay.
What's in that cup? Anywho, I was gonna say your idea of how do we weed out that characteristic. That is a characteristic that has recently been weeded in to
I agree.
our herd society. It's one that we are, that we've had,
I have a relatively controversial take on this, and I can't get anybody to agree, I'll just spout it off here because it's just fun to think about. I think that this trait got weeded into our society thanks to the Roman takeover of Europe. As Rome reached out and started taking over Europe, the tactics of Rome were either to basically eliminate an entire region, their government and higher ups, leaving only the peasants, or they would, if the legionnaires approached a ruling class willing to work with Rome, they would inevitably use a tactic of internal escalation, whereby they would ask the leaders to do things that were counter to their local well-being, in an escalating fashion, leading up to a point where the leaders were only they were reliant on Rome at that point because they had no local support. So they would become reliant on Rome to continue existing, and then so I think that we created this like split society where I think that Rome was so influential over European society that it created this split society where there are groups that are only self-interested genetically, it's like a genetic and cultural pass on, of this kind of ruling class that was created that was dedicated towards Rome, and then you have the rest of everybody who is still of the societal herd mentality, and they will work cooperatively to achieve their goals. Anyway, that's just my crazy
Absolutely.
theory.
I mean, there are a couple of theories of, especially when it comes to misinformation. Just kind of putting things into context. The Wright brothers had, in essence, created an airplane in the 1900s. 66 years after that, we were able to land on the moon. And in between that period and where we are now, we have access to all information literally in the palm of our hand, the sum total of human knowledge. And there are a lot of occasions where, I can't help but feel that ultimately it is a good thing. It is a collaborative thing, but there's so much misinformation out there, and generations that didn't grow up with the internet, and folks who grew up entirely with the internet, and folks who are within my generation that grew up saddling both world before the internet and world after the internet. We're all just trying to navigate it and trying to apply critical thinking skills when it comes to surveying all of this information that we have. It's just an abundance. It's like, it just reminds me of that meme. I think it was Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and there are like all these pancakes coming her way, and she's just eating all the pancakes without discretion. And it's like, what if some of the pancakes are poisoned, though? There's just an overabundance of stuff, and we just have to weed through it and use discretion, and again, apply critical thinking skills. I know critical thinking is a trait that is used to describe a lot of courses when we're in school. Like, yeah, in this course you'll learn critical thinking. It just kind of seems like an overarching vague thing, but no, those are things we need. And I feel like a lot of folks
people don't have it.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of these anti-vaxxers and folks that are like, no, if I apply lavender essential oils, I'll be fine. Which, hey, you know what? That's the thing. Like, horehound and honey, super great for a sore throat. I'm also gonna get my polio vaccine though.
Right.
It's my thing.
So it is 11:01, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and I will just right here say thank you for joining us, and thank you to everyone who's joined us on the internet. I'd like to continue this conversation, however, just for a few minutes, and so if you have time to stick around, please do. Um, and I wanted to, sorry, I now have lost my train of thought. It went right out of my head. But yeah, the the idea of critical thinking, I think, is a skill set that we pay a lot of lip service to, but isn't it isn't that easy to teach. It isn't that easy to learn either. Um, and critical, maybe that's one of the problems with this culture of uh, misinformation. That there is a culture of misinformation. There is a world in which it is easier to get by with misinformation than it is to contemplate or to live in the reality that we actually live in. Um, so
Yes.
maybe, yeah.
I'll just, as an educator, I'll just say yes.
Thank you for that educated yes. Um, it's
This,
yeah, yeah, it's harder to live in reality, in the reality of reality. And then, many of us are out here trying to give people an escape from reality, but where I think that we differ from those that do misinformation campaigns, we're giving people an escape from reality as a way of expressing ourselves, and where some people are giving people an escape from reality in order to garner power and prestige. Um, yeah.
There's a difference between, in our case, entertaining. We our ideal, as going back to the Greeks once again, Aristotle, the notion of teaching and delighting, that kind of thing. It is not our job per se to pass on information, that kind of thing. People are supposed to interpret what we do in comparison to something like an infomercial. It's like they walk that line, that very fine line, in many cases, between what is truth and what is not.
Well, I mean, that's how Fox News gets away with saying stuff
Yeah.
that they say, is they say they're entertainment.
No.
No,
I
no,
was
they're
gonna
not.
say,
But
even though they have news literally in their name.
Yeah. You can't say there's a certain criteria to entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Whether we want to recognize it or not, there's certain rules and regulations to what is deemed as what would be entertainment and what would be an infomercial that is because those people don't come out there as characters. They may be characters, but they aren't characters.
oh no,
Only when they're
Alex.
only when they're the defendants in lawsuits.
Yes, I was about to say. Alex Jones says that he's a character. That his character that he plays on TV is clearly understood by his audience to not be a real person.
What's his name?
Alex Jones.
What's the character's name?
Alex Jones.
Well, there you go.
Oh,
You already messed up. There's the critical thinking skill already lost out the window right there. His name is Alex Jones. He says his character's name is Alex Jones. Somebody should have thought about that.
Yeah, and that's just that's the defense of like, oh, I get to say whatever I want with no repercussions. No, just not. No.
I mean, even in creative theater where it's wholly fictional, we have to think about what we're saying and how we're saying it. And otherwise we face repercussions. We face repercussions In ticket sales, we face repercussions in social circles. We face repercussions in society in general, in theater society, in the micro societies that we belong to. When we don't think about what we're saying and say it with clarity and really decide what we're saying and how we're saying it for a particular reason. So
And there's
yeah.
there's that clear demarcation. You know what I'm saying? For us, there's a very clear demarcation that we are entertainment. And something like Alex Jones, he crosses that line and then he uses it as defense, as you said. And that weakens, to a certain extent, that makes it becomes even much more important for us to be very clear about what we do and who we are, you know, and what is entertainment and what we do say. So like, I totally agree. Sorry. Go ahead, Evelyn.
No, it's perfectly all right. At least for me, I enjoy it.
Thank you.
I enjoy all these conversations. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. We didn't quite touch on Kensington again, but and imperialism in general, but there's the imperialism of the Roman Empire that I talked about, which is a replicatable and replicated condition even to today. I'll leave it at that. I want to thank you for hopping on here, having this conversation with me. I really appreciate all my guests. Brittany, Steve, Oliver, Argent Combat. Go check out their classes. Sign up for the next round of courses as soon as they are made available, because your staff work could use a little work. I guarantee you. I know mine could. I haven't done Kempo for 25 years, so I know my staff work could use a little work. And thank you to Dr. Ardencia Hall-Karambe for joining us as always, and providing a educated and well thought out reaction to my lost nature.
I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you too. With that, I'm gonna go back to a shot of just me on camera. I'm gonna fix my camera a little bit. Thank you everyone for tuning in. As always, really appreciate you tuning in this week, and we'll be off again next week. We were doing this every other week thing for some reason. But we'll be back in 2 weeks on Wednesday, and we'll have another set of special guests, and we'll have another set of regular guests, and we'll have another set of topics. We'll bring you anything live and interesting that we feel needs covered in the immediate through our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages. Facebook.com/LightThiefProductions, YouTube.com/LightThiefProductions, Twitter.com/LightThiefProd. Leave off the uctions because, Twitter doesn't have a lot of characters to their screen names. So, LightThiefProd on Twitter. And if you like what you see, if you want to support independent local media, please donate to our Patreon, patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. You see a theme here. We'll be releasing our new website in the next couple of weeks, so look forward to that. And keep up with us on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe there. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the like button on this show. Wherever you see it, it helps the show get out to more people. It lets more people know that we exist. And it's a free way to support us. Again, tune in 2 weeks, and we hope to see you then. Other than that, enjoy your Wednesday. If I can get music to play.